Hi again and welcome to the show. I'm Tom, this is Juliana, and thank you for being here. We're absolutely delighted to have you on today's episode. We are following the ministry of Jesus, which is filled with incredible miracles, incredible teachings. But what I think you may appreciate the most is the incredible kindness with which Jesus acted in relation to others. There really is no one in the Bible, no one in the history of the world like Jesus, kindest man who ever lived. And today we're going to be reading about Jesus. We invite you to join us. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bible Tales. When Jesus had crossed over to the other side, a great crowd gathered about him. Then there came a ruler of the synagogues, Jairus, who fell at his feet. "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay hands on her that she may live." And so Jesus went with him. While he was speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said to Jairus, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But Jesus said, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John. And at the ruler's house he saw a tumultuous situation, with people weeping and wailing loudly. "Why do you weep?" Jesus said. "The child is not dead, but sleeping." They laughed at him. But he put all of them outside, took the child's parents and his disciples, and went in where the child was. She was 12 years old. Taking her by the hand, he said, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl got up and walked, and all were overcome with amazement. And Jesus strictly charged them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. If you're wondering why Jesus said for them to tell no one, well, we understand later that Jesus was operating by a strict timetable according to God and the Bible. Jesus had a full understanding of this, even though the people around him at that time may not have. In retrospect, we see that the events of the New Testament unfolded accurately, timely, according to God's perfect order. With his disciples, he went away from there and came to his own country. And on the Sabbath, he taught in the synagogue. Many who heard him were astonished. "Where did this man get all this?" they said, taking offense at him. What's the part you took offense at? All the righteousness? What is the wisdom that is given to him? What mighty works are being brought by his hands? Isn't it kind of silly that Jesus was doing miracles and preaching righteousness and the people were saying, "Where did this come from?" But that's what they did. They said, "Is this not the carpenter?" Their complaint was that Jesus was not a religious leader. Their complaint is that Jesus was a regular guy, and they probably had been brainwashed by the religious types that there was a class distinction, and there was. People have different occupations in this world, but what we learned from the ministry of Jesus is that he did not call people with religious occupations. Have you ever thought about this? The 12 apostles were regular guys. Now, Jesus was very popular, and we know that the religious leaders, there's people that were priests, and scribes that came that they wanted to talk to him, and they recognized that he was a great teacher, he could have recruited some of them or worked out a deal with some of them. That is not God's perfect will. God wanted regular people to be ministers alongside Jesus. You may think of yourself as just a regular person, and in a way you are, in a way that is certainly true, but if you are listening to this, if you're even considering this, it likely means that God is calling to you and that you have a calling to serve God by preaching. If you're listening to this and it is resonating with you, I really want you to consider that. Those in his homeland said, "Are not his mother and his brothers and his sisters here with us?" Well, in other words, they were saying, "Wait, I know who you are and I know where you're from, so why would I listen to you?" It's such a strange thing, but it's very typical too. There's been people that I have preached the Bible to, and the first thing that they'll bring up is, "Oh, I've known you a long time." I say, "What does that have to do with anything?" "Yeah, but I know you, Tom." I know you. It doesn't change what we're talking about, but Jesus recognized that this is the case. It works that way sometimes. "A prophet is not without honor," he said, "except in his own country," which you and I are not prophets. But the principle is still there that if you're going to minister to people from the Bible, you'll probably do better talking to strangers than people that know you. And some of that's on us, I guess, because of our imperfection. As a rebuttal for what you're saying from the Bible, as they say, "I know you." And essentially that's what they said to Jesus. But the thing is, in Jesus' case is different than ours, and he didn't do anything wrong to anyone. It's like, "What do you know about me, that I'm perfect?" Well, he didn't say that, but that might have been what he was thinking. Jesus said a prophet, or in this instance, a servant of God, is not without honor except in his own house and among his own kin. He could do no mighty work, it said there, except that he had his hands upon a few sick people and healed them. How sad that Jesus, he did miracles, and the people said the miracles weren't good enough. They couldn't accept it because their argument was, "Yeah, but I know your sister." So apparently that's a real blockade for some people. The sad part is that Jesus left this area, and people that may have been healed or could have been healed, he healed a few people, but then he left, because where there is a lack of faith, God doesn't really operate. He chooses not to operate as much. This is true if you read the Bible, where when faith disappears, God's miracles will disappear too. Remember when Peter began sinking into the water, and that was the Apostle Peter. Jesus said, "Well, your faith went down the tubes at the last minute there. What do you expect?" Something to think about. After that, he went among the villages teaching. The 12 he sent out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. In other words, the apostles could kick out demons, which apparently before this time, the demons were calling the shots. So that's also something to think about. He charged them to take nothing except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, to wear sandals and not to put on 2 tunics. In other words, ignore what just happened, by the way.
Just babysitting.
Yes, just think of this as taking care of business. Taking care of business. This means relying on faith. There's nothing wrong with having extra supplies or having extra money, but God is so big on faith that in this instance, Jesus told him, "I want you to go out into the ministry and just rely on God." The other thing is, if you're inclined to help someone that you see ministering about God, even if it means just giving them a thumbs up on YouTube or giving them support in some way, if you feel inclined to help in the ministry in some way, go with it, because this may be God utilizing your resources and abilities in the kingdom work. These people in Galilee who could not believe in Jesus because they said that, "Well, we know you." What in the world did they know? that his behavior was above reproach, that he was of the house of David. This is inexcusable. Today we have people that will refuse to even entertain the idea that Jesus is divine. The Shroud of Turin, which in our day has been verified to not only be authentic, has been verified to be of miraculous origin. If you'd like to watch a couple of videos on the Shroud of Turin, there is nothing on earth like it. A 2,000-year-old burial cloth with a hologram of Jesus on its surface. The people who demand miracles have a miracle right in front of them and they refuse to look. When they do look, they refuse to give explanation, they hand wave it. I believe the Shroud of Turin will be used as evidence in conviction at the great white throne. It is just something I suspect. I have had people that I have preached to about the Shroud of Turin, and they hand wave me and they say, "Tom, stop." Stop, why? After this, he went among the villages teaching. King Herod heard of all this, for Jesus' name had become known. And he said, "John the Baptizer, whom I beheaded, has been resurrected." For Herod had put John in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother's wife. And Herod had married her. But John said, "It is not lawful for you to be married to your brother's wife." And for this he was put in prison. Herodias wanted to execute him, but she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing he was a righteous and holy man. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet. Herodias' daughter danced, and she pleased Herod and the guests. "Ask me for whatever you want," Herod said, "up to half my kingdom, and I will grant it." The girl went out to her mother and said, "What shall I ask?" "The head of John the Baptizer," Herodias said. The girl returned and told Herod this. If you're wondering if people around you are demonized, here's another clue. When you see people on TV and movies and the news and they're doing terrible, unimaginable things, we've gotten so used to it, we almost don't ask why anymore. Why would you do this? John was already in prison for saying the obvious, that it is unlawful in Israel to be married to someone else's wife. There is no explanation why he's even in jail, but then he's going to be executed. Well, I think there was a lot of demon play going on because this is not normal. The inhumane has become so normalized that reading of these horrors 2,000 years later, I'm like, oh, yeah, because it sounds like something that can happen in our own day too. "I want you to give me the head of John the Baptizer." Well, the king was exceedingly sorry, but because of his oaths and the guests around him, he could not break it, and so he sent word to a soldier of the guard who beheaded John in prison. When the disciples of John heard of this, they took his body and buried him in a tomb. Couple of thoughts here. This is why it's a bad idea for a man, a grown man, to be a pushover to a woman or a child. This is, look what happened. Danger of being susceptible to what other people think. The scriptures say that Herod feared John and did not want to do this because he recognized that John was a holy man. But he did it anyway because he gave an oath in front of guests, and we all know that you can't break an oath. Well, of course you can. Herod could have said, "Oh, I didn't mean murder. I didn't mean killing a prophet." So anything other than that. This is the propaganda of the world.